I picked up this, I think it's about a 97 F350 dually. It's got a hydraulic dump deck on it, and it's 4x4, but unfortunately it has an automatic and a 460, so it's a gasser. Boo! Not sure exactly what I'm gonna do with it yet. It needs an out-of-province inspection, so I can't exactly just slap plates on it and use it. And it's been sitting for well over a decade, so if it's gonna be used as a dump truck, it's definitely gonna need a lot of work from here. But it is one of the cleanest OBS cabs I've seen in a while. It's just got surface rust. So I mean, the cab's worth about what I paid for the whole truck if someone's looking for a perfectly clean, just needs paint basically OBS cab, or nice fender panels. Really, those fender panels are hard to come by. Loading this thing was pretty fun because it's got its brake lines rusted right out. So I just kind of like jammed it onto the trailer and actually drove right into the frickin' tongue up here. And I didn't break my winch, but I crushed this crust bumper. So yeah, it's old, but it's got like 100,000 K on it, and it has a rebuilt transmission in it too. So it's a rebuilt E4OD. 460s are good engines, but they burn way too much fuel to really use. But mostly it's got the electronic over hydraulic dump unit in it, and these big dump cylinders that I don't even know, they might snap off when I try and actually pump it up. Like, look at that thing, it's in rough shape. But I might end up just using the dump deck and putting it on something else. I don't know, it was mostly another project really, but I'm gonna try and remove it from the trailer now with no brake lines. So I guess I'll just run into things to stop. Exhaust is drowning me out. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I don't even know where the switches and relays are for this dump unit here. I actually have no clue. Maybe it's it does help. Maybe some control. Oh, maybe it's that switch. Yeah, the door is just not working at all. Seems like the drum brakes are just seized right up. The one wheel was just dragging, locked right up, but it's got brand new brake shoes in here, so I'm assuming that somebody already knew that had problems. And I'm not even seeing a control for that dump deck anywhere. So this here electronic over hydraulic unit, the switch in the cab wasn't working, so I just figured I'd come here and just straight up jump the relay. And we're getting sparks, but no whir from that motor, so I'm assuming that motor is seized up. So I guess we'll pull that guy out, see if we can free it up, and if not, see if I can get a replacement unit for this guy. I can tell whoever wired this up had no clue what they were doing, because this is our main positive wire coming from the battery, and it's not fused, it's not tied up anywhere, it's just laying along the frame rail all the way just directly to the battery. So if it rubs through anywhere, it gets caught in the drive shaft, it's gonna burn the vehicle down. Ridiculous. Anyways, we can just jump that directly in to the motor. And yeah, we ain't getting nothing from that motor, so it needs definitely pulling off and probably replacing, honestly. And if I end up doing anything with this unit, I'll actually wire this up properly with a breaker. Okay, so pulling out this pump wasn't too bad. There's about 4 bolts there, and yeah, the pump itself is in great shape. It's not seized up at all, but this electric motor is super seized up. Look at those brushes, they are crusty. Anyways, as long as I can clean up everything and make these brushes move again, and there's no shorting in this armature or in those external coils, I can actually run this motor again. Otherwise, I'm gonna go ahead and I guess find a replacement motor for this dude. I'm guessing this thing hasn't been used in about 10 years, so oof, it is crusty in there. They never had wood on this deck, so all the rain and snow just sat on here and rotted everything out, but I'll do my best. I think some brake clean and some wire brushing and cleaning up all these connections here, maybe she will spin again. It has already been over 2 weeks since I brought this truck home, and I haven't really done anything with it because I was waiting on this right here, the replacement 12-volt motor for this hydraulic pump, because this one is just toast. Yeah. Anyways, took a while to find a replacement motor for it, but I finally did, and then it was supposed to show up in like 3 days, but you know the way Amazon is sometimes, so it ended up taking 2 weeks apparently. Now that I have it, I can actually clean this up. I got to pull that bearing out of there and should be able to test it out. This motor here didn't actually come with a replacement relay, but that's fine because I have one, so I'll go ahead and put a new relay on that. But it looks pretty well identical, so I'm sure it'll just be a direct replacement without any messing around needed. Yeah, it looks like exactly what I need. Oh yeah, with a split shaft on there. So, not sure how I'm gonna go about pulling this bearing out of there. It's gonna be interesting. I don't have a tiny little internal puller for that, and there isn't really much room anyways. Yeah, I'm gonna take this to a bench and I will weld something onto the bearing so I can yank it out, probably weld a bolt on there and use, I don't actually have a slide hammer on me, so yeah, I wouldn't even think about using that bearing because it's totally seized. So yeah, probably weld something onto the end of it and yank it out of there so I can press this new one on in there and test it out. So my plan to get this bearing out of here is basically just weld this nut on there and then weld this washer on top of the nut, so that way I have something to put this 3-jaw puller on to pull the bearing out. Shouldn't be too hard. Yeah, I guess I'll just give it a try. I hope we got enough penetration there for that to actually work. I guess we'll see. That may have not been the ideal method, but it got the job done, which is all that really matters in the end. I'm going to clean up the whole mating surface here, and then I'm going to grease it before putting the new motor on. This connector wire here is a little bit long, but it'll do for now. I can go and shorten it later on. And just like that, we have a dump unit with a new motor on it. So I guess I can go ahead and hook it up to a battery and make sure that spits fluid out of there. And then all I got to do is put it back in the truck. Hopefully when it's back in the truck, we can make that dump bed do what it was built to do. So I got the pump just sitting here, and I got that line hooked up and just hooked it up to the battery with some jumper cable so I can test it out. And got a whir of the pump, which is good. But we also have a spew from that hydraulic line right there, which is no surprise to me because that guy is rotted out. So I guess I got to get a new line made up for that guy. So for some reason that line was actually on a quick connect, which is interesting. I wonder why they would have done that. But anyways, I can just power it up with the 1 cylinder for now. Oh, she stalled right out. Yeah, I expected that. It lifted the deck up just a little bit. So I think what I'm gonna need to do is take my crane. Actually, that's why I had that chain on there, because I was already trying to lift it. And lift while pumping that. And probably take a torch and heat up all of our pivot points, because they're just seized right solid. Since the hydraulic pack cannot lift the deck with just the 1 cylinder, because the joints are also seized up, I'm gonna use the crane. I'm going to hook it onto that chain there and lift the deck up while powering it up with that 1 cylinder. And hopefully that'll break it free. But I'm guessing all these joints are so stiff that I'm actually just gonna have to take the torch and heat up every single pivot point until it breaks free. Which is really not surprising, because that's just caked with rust. Rust is just severely packed into all of those joints. Well, that definitely broke her loose, but it didn't do it without quite a bit of struggle. I actually ended up yanking the truck over a little bit, but yeah, those cylinders look like they're in good shape. The pivot points are just really stiff, so I'm gonna loop them all down some more, I think. Now I got the positive cable to the down solenoid, so I can hook up the jumper cable to that, and that should allow me to lower the deck now, because the valve should be stopping it from just dropping down on its own. It looks like I actually can't push down enough to get that to go down, but I got it hanging on the chain up there. So now I guess I'll bring the torch out here, and now I'll actually heat up all those joints to hopefully free them up, which I honestly should have done in the beginning to avoid breaking stuff. We've got these 2 pivot points back here, and looking at the rust in there, I really hope that they are meant to pivot internally, which, yeah, I think we got a through pin there, so it should work that way, I hope. I don't even know how I'm gonna heat those up, probably from the bottom side. Yeah, but both of those. And then the ends of each cylinder there where the pin goes through, have to heat those up. I don't think that'll drop. That's definitely safe. So, well, seeing as I can't force it to drop, I'm gonna heat it and then try to force it to drop. These are hot. I'm just gonna soak them down with a bit of oil mixed with diesel. That should hopefully soak into all those pivot points and maybe clear some of the rust out. I guess we'll see. Feel all the heat radiating off of these joints. I know I was getting this guy hot enough because there's actually a grease nipple there and it was spewing out some hot grease. So that's always nice because the grease ends up sitting in there and getting really hard and drying out. Wow, this thing is a whole lot tougher than I thought it would be. I had to shake the heck out of it and reef it up and down, but hey, it went down all the way. So I'm gonna try powering it up again, see if it goes up on its own, and then power it down, power it up, power it down, hopefully break everything free. But I think that might be being a little bit too hopeful. I feel like I probably milked the heck out of that poor little battery, and I don't think I'll get any more juice out of it. This guy here, I have it on this little solenoid, which is to let the fluid back down, and I'll hook it back up to this guy, which goes directly to the motor. Don't worry, I'll wire that all up properly at some point, but we'll go ahead and hook that back up. And I hear the motor whirring, but nothing. Oh, and a little bit of smoke from those jumper cables. I think we also probably don't have the best connection. Yeah, I need a freshly charged battery and proper connections to that pump right there. But I think maybe I'll go ahead and hook the crane back up to it and just kind of push it up and down a few times, and that should free it up pretty well. I'll probably spray a bit more lube in all of those joints too while I'm at it. You can see that's definitely freed up a whole lot more than it was before. It goes down by gravity all by itself without any struggles. So I gotta wait till the hydraulic shop's open so I can get some more hydraulic lines made up for that guy, and then I'll actually be able to dump it by itself. And I gotta wire it up and bolt it back down properly. And then once it's doing what it's supposed to, I guess I can put boards on this deck or something. Someone, I guess, was towing a fifth wheel hitch with this too, because we got a fifth wheel hitch welded into the dump deck. Not sure if I'm gonna hang on to that or just toss that, because I don't really have a use for it. I mean, I guess I could use it to tow my camper, but I don't see that happening. I recently mentioned that I needed a new plasma cutter because my old one was only 40 amps and it wasn't really big enough for what I needed. So Yes Welder hooked me up. They sent me over a 65 amp plasma cutter, and I'm excited to try it out. This plasma cutter they claim 65 amps, and from what I've read, I think they say it can almost clean cut an inch, or at least 7/8 steel, which is pretty impressive if it can actually do that, especially because of how compact this machine is. Look at that, it's hardly any bigger than my 65 amp machine, and it comes with a nice size whip. We got a ground clamp, and we have a variable voltage option. So if you're working in a spot where you only have 110, you can work with that, which, I mean, you're not gonna be cutting 1/2 inch steel with 110, but if you need to do some body metal work and you only happen to have 110 in your garage, that works great. The most amazing thing about this machine was, I'm pretty sure it was only like $500 Canadian, so like $300 American, which is super impressive if it can actually do what they claim. One thing I love about this, there's our air regulator. It actually comes with a little air dryer on it. Now these are absolutely mandatory because when you get any water in your airline, it'll totally destroy a nice cut. So that's super awesome that it comes with that. Let's just switch this guy on. It tells me I'm running on 110 there. We got our amperage. And that's an error code because there's no air pressure on the airline yet. But yeah, I guess, okay, so it claims you can cut up to 45 amps on 110, I guess, which is pretty impressive. I like this adjustable amperage control. That's actually pretty sweet. And then you can control post flow, and you can control kind of what you're adjusting. But this digital screen is really nice. I'm really excited to try this out and see how well it works. I really needed an upgrade. And if you're looking for something that's like super, like unbelievably affordable, like my 40 amp plasma cutter I bought from Canadian Tire like 4 years ago, and I spent like 900 bucks on it. And it was the cheapest deal I could find for a plasma cutter. This thing is half the price, and it's 65 amps instead of 40, which is pretty amazing. So I'm really excited to try it out. The plasma cutter also came with a really nice torch. It looks like it's about 15 feet long. I'm going to take it apart because I want some connections for my CNC, and it doesn't have any quick connections. So I'm gonna take it apart and see which 2 wires I need to run a harness to for my CNC plasma cutter. So it looks to me like we have these 2 black wires there. They come from the torch connection, and they go to a 2-pin plug right there. So I'm gonna disconnect those guys, and I'm just gonna confirm that these are our trigger control so that I can splice into those for a separate harness. I got my multimeter hooked up to those 2 wires, and I just get pull the trigger, and I got it set to continuity so we can check the continuity. When I pull the trigger, it should go off. Yep. So if I can splice up a harness to each of those wires, I can run that to the arc droid to control the plasma cutter. And just like that, we have a remote wire spliced on into our harness. So I can plug that guy back in, and I'll end up just running this wire out the front vents here, so that way it's easily accessible. Wire just plugs into that little guy right there. So I put this picker on this truck last summer, and this PTO engagement cable, I never really hooked it up properly. I just kind of put it here, and it's just been kind of bouncing around down here. So I'd like to make a nice little bracket that bolts to the dash that I can run that through, so it holds it in one place instead of letting it bounce around. And then I can also engage and disengage it with one hand. I'm going to hook up this plasma cutter to the arc droid to cut out the little bracket I need. I'm going to cut it out a 1/4 inch plate, and I'm running it on 220 volts. Hopefully it runs smoothly. I just need to hook up my torch controls to those 2 connectors right there. The thing has a pretty loud fan, and it feels like it's pushing a lot of air. I like the little water drain on this. You just kind of push that guy up, and it drains out any water that's in there. So there's our PTO cable holder. I designed it up on Fusion 360. I'm gonna cut it out of 1/4-inch plate, so I just need to adjust the tuning here, and then we'll do our first test cut with the Yes Welder 65. I did add small letters that say PTO on it, so this will be a good test to see how fine of cutting it can do, because it's really easy to mess those letters up. The Yes Welder managed to cut this plate here. It did a decent job there. It managed to not mess up those little letters. I'm not quite sure why those little cut-ins happened. That might have been a programming issue on my side. But as I play with this plasma cutter a bit more, I will get it dialed in a bit better, and I'll end up with better results. It's always a little bit finicky to begin with. Well, that turned out terrible. I thought that might happen. That's why I tried to hold it as far down in the vise as possible. But it just bent where the lettering was, even though it was held in the vise. I really need to get myself a press with some bending dies so I can make nicer bends. But this is going to function just the same. It's just not going to look as nice, which doesn't really matter to me. I also want to try cutting some 1/2-inch steel with this plasma cutter, which should be about the thickest I'll be cutting at this point. That's a nice clean cut for freehand and not too much dross either. I love machines like this because they're so affordable. You know, not everyone has $5,000 to go and throw at a plasma cutter, so they might happily want to spend $500 just to get in the door. And is this $500 plasma cutter going to outperform the $5,000 one? No, but it gets you cutting without a huge investment. Perfect fit. And just like that, I have a securely mounted PTO cable. No longer will it be flopping around, and I can now disengage and engage it single-handedly.